Teens are often portrayed as composed and collected, especially in formal settings like courtrooms.
I hope one day you can see I would never let this happen or do it on purpose. I wish I could remember what happened. I'm just so sorry. I'm heartbroken. I love Dom and Davia.
However, there have been numerous cases where these teens have defied this stereotype, showcasing craziest attitudes in courtroom. Starting with a case of 19-year-old girl who was arrested for murdering a pregnant woman. In Memphis, Tennessee, Shelby Isaac, a 19-year-old, was accused of a heinous crime, the first-degree murder of Eddie Tate and Edwina Thomas, who was 8 weeks pregnant at the time. The motive behind the crime was allegedly a dispute over a $250 hair extension purchase. 2 years earlier, Isaac had bought the extensions from Tate and, dissatisfied with the purchase, sought a refund. According to witness testimony, during a subsequent meeting to resolve the issue, Isaac allegedly shot and killed both victims. The defense argued that the case against Isaac lacked substantial physical evidence. They emphasized that the evidence presented did not conclusively point to Isaac as the perpetrator. Despite these arguments, the jury had to consider all the evidence presented during the trial. The pivotal moment came when the jury was asked if they had reached a unanimous verdict on all counts. Judge James Lammy presided over the reading of the verdicts.
Ms. Murphy, looks like you have a jacket. Are you the foreperson of the jury? Has the jury arrived at a verdict in this case? All 4 counts? Were they unanimous? Ms. Isaac, please stand.
Shelby Isaac stood as the jury's decisions were announced. The first count resulted in a guilty verdict for second-degree murder, and this decision was confirmed by each juror when individually polled. Upon hearing the verdict, Isaac collapsed to the floor, a dramatic moment as the judge continued to address the remaining counts. As the court staff attended to Isaac, who remained on the floor, the judge moved on with the proceedings. The jury also found Isaac guilty of second-degree murder for the death of Edwina Thomas and guilty of reckless homicide and criminally negligent homicide for the death of the unborn baby.
Count 1 of this verdict reads, we the jury find the defendant guilty of second-degree murder as included in count 1. Signed by the foreperson of the jury. Ms. Murphy, is that your verdict? Mr. Aldridge, is that your verdict? Ms. Foster, is that your verdict?
Yes.
And is that your verdict, ma'am? Is that your verdict, ma'am? Sir, is that your verdict? Ma'am, is that your verdict?
Shelby Isaac received a total of 30 years in a state penitentiary. Her convictions included 2 counts of second-degree murder, 1 count of reckless homicide, and 1 count of criminally negligent homicide. Given the length of the sentence, Isaac will not be eligible for release until 2040, by which time she will be 42 years old. If you thought that was bad, this is because you didn't know about this case, where 18-year-old girl received 20 years prison. At the S. James Foxman Justice Center in Daytona Beach, Florida, Kyandrea Cook faced a pivotal moment as she was sentenced for her role in a violent crime. The incident involved using a dating app to set up a robbery, which culminated in a teenage boy being shot. Fortunately, the teen survived the ordeal. Cook had entered into a plea deal that saw a conspiracy charge, which carried a potential life sentence, being dropped. However, she still faced serious charges: carjacking, attempted carjacking with a deadly weapon, and felony battery. The courtroom was tense as Cook, her loved ones, and onlookers waited to hear the judge's decision. Judge Foxman, he emphasized the gravity of the crime, describing it as an intentional and orchestrated ambush in which Cook played a central role. Consequently, he found her guilty of all 3 remaining charges and sentenced her to 20 years in state prison, with the sentences to be served concurrently. The severity of the sentence elicited a dramatic reaction from Cook and her mother, both of whom were overwhelmed with emotion. The courtroom filled with cries of distress as they grappled with the harsh reality of the 20-year prison term. This reaction stemmed from a fundamental misunderstanding. Cook and her family believed that the plea deal meant she would avoid prison time altogether.
Ms. Cook, you're before the court for sentencing. A couple of things going in your favor. One, you didn't hold a firearm during these episodes. The second is that the victim luckily survived. That being said, this was intentional. It was an orchestrated ambush, and you are a main part of that. And for that, I'm going to go ahead and adjudicate you guilty of all 3 charges, sentence you to 20 years in state prison. Concurrent as to the first 2 counts of 3 charges. All fines and costs
I think he got good in you, and I think he got potential. I'll lose sight of that.
Recognizing the intensity of their reactions and the apparent miscommunication, Judge Foxman allowed Cook to enter a new plea deal. This decision was made in light of the confusion between Cook and her assistant public defender regarding the terms of the original plea agreement. The new plea deal significantly reduced her sentence from 20 years to 11 years in state prison. However, this next case is about 16 years old who was crying during his trial. In Buffalo, New York, 16-year-old Dylan Shoemaker faced charges of second-degree murder for the death of 23-month-old Austin Smith. The incident occurred in March 2013 while Shoemaker was babysitting his 18-year-old girlfriend's child at his parents' home in Springville. The tragic outcome was the brutal beating and subsequent death of the toddler. On that fateful evening, Shoemaker claimed he was trying to get the child to stop crying. His methods, however, were far from acceptable or safe. Shoemaker admitted to repeatedly striking the child, leading to severe head trauma that caused Austin's death by bleeding on the brain. Following the incident, Shoemaker was promptly arrested and faced multiple charges, including child abuse and second-degree murder. During the trial, Shoemaker maintained that he did not intend to kill the child. He argued that his actions, though reckless, were not premeditated.
I can't take back what was done. I wish I could. I would give my life for Austin. I loved him a lot.
Austin Smith was completely defenseless. That's a given. But there were other dynamics at work there, including my client's inability to either control his anger or frustration and his inexperience in babysitting.
Based on his short life now, what is to say he won't do this again?
Well, we don't know that. I think it's completely unlikely. It was a situational, circumstantial thing.
Upon entering the courtroom for his sentencing, Shoemaker immediately broke into tears, expressing deep remorse and claiming he would trade his life for Austin's if he could. However, the judge was not convinced by Shoemaker's display of remorse. A critical piece of evidence was a recorded phone call between Shoemaker and his mother from the holding center. This callous statement starkly contrasted with his courtroom behavior and highlighted his attempt to manipulate the legal process. The judge referenced this recorded conversation during the sentencing, emphasizing that Shoemaker's tears and apologies were part of a calculated attempt to garner sympathy rather than genuine remorse.
The record will show that you admitted on July 23, 2013, in a phone call to your mother from the holding center, you stated, and I got a quote from the court reporter, "I am a 16-year-old blonde. Probably all I have to do is cry in front of the jury, and they're going to feel sorry for me," end quote.
Afterwards, Shoemaker was sentenced to 25 years to life behind bars.
As a result, Shoemaker was initially sentenced to the maximum penalty of 25 years to life in prison. But this next is worsened than the others where 18-year-old boys sprayed out in court. In Milwaukee County Courthouse, 18-year-old Sean Dell Jackson faced charges of murder. The incident unfolded when Jackson and a friend, both intent on robbery, encountered Nathan Potter, a 21-year-old University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee student who was heading to his apartment. When the duo demanded money from Potter, they discovered he had none. In response, Jackson fatally shot Potter. After the murder, Jackson fled to Mississippi, but his freedom was short-lived. The court proceedings revealed not only the gravity of Jackson's crime, but also his disturbing behavior. During the trial, Jackson exhibited a lack of remorse, gesturing disrespectfully towards the victim's grieving family. This behavior led to him being quickly escorted out of the courtroom. As he was being removed, Jackson flashed a chilling smile at the victim's family, deepening their anguish.
Demonstrated to be not of caring of human life and the need to protect the community, which I also fear for with Mr. Jackson.
At the sentencing, Jackson's mother addressed the court, expressing her shock and sorrow. Despite her plea, Jackson's demeanor during the trial had already painted a grim picture. Given a chance to speak, Jackson attempted a last-ditch effort to save himself. The judge, however, was unswayed by Jackson's apology. Emphasizing the need to protect the community, he handed down a life sentence without the possibility of parole.
Being out in the community, I am going to go ahead on count 1, the first-degree intentional homicide conviction, and I am going to sentence Mr. Jackson to life imprisonment without possibility for extended supervision. I know that that is something that is reserved for the most serious of cases, and I believe that this case rises to that level.
Jackson's friend and accomplice, who acted as the lookout during the crime, pleaded guilty and received a 12-year sentence. Despite the despicable behavior of some of Jackson's family members in court, his uncle stood firm, maintaining his stance and cooperation with the police despite facing threats. However, this next case is more shocking than the others, where a suspect breaks down to tears after hearing his sentence. A 19-year-old Brandon Spencer faced charges for a shooting at a crowded Halloween party on the campus of the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. The incident, which resulted in injuries to 4 individuals, fortunately did not result in any fatalities. The shooting stemmed from an ongoing feud between Spencer and a rival gang member. Spencer, a known and documented gang member, allegedly opened fire with the intent to kill his target, despite the presence of a large crowd. This reckless act led to his swift detention by the Los Angeles Police Department. A couple of days after the shooting, Spencer was formally charged with 4 counts of attempted murder. During the trial, the prosecution emphasized Spencer's gang affiliation, arguing that the shooting was a direct result of his feud with a rival. They highlighted the danger posed by someone willing to fire into a crowded area to settle a score.
Down in court today, banging his head on a table after a judge sentenced him to life in prison.
A man convicted of a violent crime here on campus got his long sentence today, and he did break down. But do students here on campus feel any safer now?
Spencer, however, maintained his innocence throughout the trial. He admitted to making mistakes, but contended that he was not the gang member the prosecution portrayed. Despite Spencer's assertions, the jury found him guilty on all counts. His defense failed to convince them of his innocence, and the evidence of his gang involvement in the context of the shooting were too compelling to ignore. During sentencing, Spencer's attitude remained a focal point. He expressed regret and apologized.
21-year-old Brandon Spencer of Inglewood bangs his head as a judge sentences him to 40 years to life after he was convicted of shooting a rival gang member at a 2012 Halloween party on the USC campus. The violence just 6 months after 2 Chinese students were murdered in an apparent robbery just off campus. Since then, USC security has been beefed up. Today, in LA Superior Court, Spencer begged for mercy from Judge Edmund Clark Jr. before sentencing.
I'm sorry for what happened, Your Honor, but I need to life in prison. And I'm not a bad person, but I made mistakes. I'm not just some gangbanger that she tried to portray me as.
During sentencing, Spencer completely broke down.
The minimum period of parole eligibility is 15 years plus 25 years to life in accordance with Penal Code Section 12022.53D. This is to be concurrent with his full term.
Now, with more security, do students feel safer?
I definitely do feel safe, especially since after 9 p.m. you have to show your ID and everything.
And I wasn't here to witness the shooting because I'm just a freshman, but I don't know, I've never felt unsafe here.
I feel very safe. I've actually been here on campus. This is my 34th year.
Ultimately, the judge sentenced Brandon Spencer to 40 years to life in prison for the 4 counts of attempted murder. However, this next case contains an 18-year-old individual who was arrested in murder case. An 18-year-old Danta Wright, who was implicated in the murder of Jordan Klee, a high school student and athlete in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Wright, along with 2 accomplices, planned to rob Klee of his drugs, clothes, and shoes. However, when Klee fought back, Wright escalated the situation by shooting him in the back of the head, killing him instantly. Wright was arrested and charged with felony murder, armed robbery, conspiracy to commit armed robbery, and felony firearm possession. During the trial, the courtroom witnessed an emotional victim impact statement from Klee's family, expressing their profound grief and loss. The victim's family pleaded for justice, highlighting the devastating impact of Klee's murder on their lives. I sincerely hope that whatever it was you wanted so badly that you felt the need to murder my son was worth the next at least 52 years of your continued existence. You won't get the luxury of raising your child because you took mine away.
Count 3, conspiracy to commit armed robbery. Count 6, the felony firearm, and an added count 7 of murder in the second degree under Pact Code 750.317. That is a felony punishable by life or any term of years. In exchange for that plea, at the time of sentencing, the people moved to dismiss counts 1, 4, and 5. There is a sentence agreement in this case. The sentence agreement is that on counts 2, 3, and 7, the defendant will serve 23 to 50 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections. Those 3 counts will run concurrent to each other. However, counts 2, 3, and 7 will all be consecutive to count 6, which requires mandatory 2 years on the felony firearm. Furthermore, we have discussed the resolution that we will not be, as part of this plea agreement, the people will not be charging this defendant for his involvement in the Keandre Duff homicide.
That's a correct statement, Your Honor.
He has put on the record the terms of the sentence agreement that pursuant to their agreement to dismiss the other counts and not charge you in the Keandre Duff homicide case, you would agree to serve 23 to 50 years in Michigan Department of Corrections plus 2 on the felony firearm. How do you want to plead to counts 2, 3, 6, and 7?
On the morning of October 4th, 2016, did you agree and conspire with 2 other individuals, Delvino Gracie and Jamarius Ellison, to commit an armed robbery?
Yeah.
And who are you going to rob?
Jordan Klee.
Jordan Klee. And that afternoon, did you in fact rob Jordan Klee?
Yeah.
And did you use a gun to place him in fear in order to take his property?
Yeah.
And as a result of that armed robbery, what did you do with that gun and Mr. Jordan Klee?
Shot him.
And where did you shoot him?
On the top of his head.
And did you kill him with that shot?
Yes.
People are satisfied now.
I sincerely hope that whatever it was you wanted so badly that you felt the need to murder my son was worth the next at least 52 years of your continued existence. You won't get the luxury of raising your child because you took mine away.
However, Wright's response to these heartfelt statements was nothing short of shocking. When given the opportunity to address the court, Wright displayed a complete lack of remorse, saying, "I'll be home soon. I'll be Keon. I love my family." His cavalier attitude infuriated the judge and devastated the victim's family, who had hoped for some semblance of contrition. The judge expressed his frustration and considered rejecting the plea deal that had been arranged. "I'm very tempted to just say I'm not going to accept this sentence agreement. We'll go to trial, and if you're convicted of felony murder, you'll go to prison for the rest of your life."
Your Honor, my client wants to address the court.
Oh, of course. Yes, sir. Mr. Wright, what would you like to say?
I just want to tell y'all, I'll be home soon, or I'll be Keon. I love my family.
That's all you got to say. You know, I have never in 23 years approximately ever not accepted a sentence agreement between the parties because it's bargained for, sentenced by the parties. But watching you sit there, smile and laugh and shake your head like this was no big deal, I'm very tempted to just say, I'm not going to accept this sentence agreement. We'll go to trial. And if you're convicted of felony murder, you'll go to prison for the rest of your life. That means you'll die there. Mr. Bella, do you want me to accept this sentence agreement?
Your Honor, before I answer the court's question, I would like an opportunity to discuss it with the victim's family.
Okay.
If the court would pass it, I would appreciate it.
I'd be happy to do that. We'll pass this matter.
I've had a very lengthy discussion with the victim's mother as well as his grandparents and some family members. They understand that obviously this is the defendant who brutally murdered their son by shooting him in the back of the head. He's shown absolutely no remorse. However, the Glee family does want to move on with this. They want to get some closure from this case. And they want to try and forgive this defendant, even though all of his actions for what he did. And they are asking, as well as the people, that you proceed with the sentencing.
Okay.
Your Honor, my client asked me to apologize to the court. His smiling was in no way meant as disrespectful either to the family, to the victim, or to this court. My client is 17 years old. He has some emotional problems and frankly was scared. And some people display fear by smiling. He really meant no disrespect. He does take this very seriously.
Ultimately, Wright was sentenced to 25 to 52 years in prison for his role in the murder, but his lack of empathy left a lasting impact on all who were present. If you thought that was bad, this is because you didn't know about this case where a 17-year-old girl was arrested for killing her boyfriend. 17-year-old McKenzie Sherill was found guilty of murder for causing a car crash that killed her boyfriend, Dominic Russo, and his friend, Davian Flanagan. The incident occurred outside of Cleveland, Ohio, and left the community in shock. On the day of the crash, Sherill drove her car at 100 miles per hour into the side of a commercial building, killing Russo and Flanagan instantly. She survived the crash, leading to a trial that would reveal disturbing details about her actions and motives. Prosecutors argued that the crash was not an accident, but a deliberate act of murder. They described Sherilla's relationship with Russo as toxic and pointed to violent threats she had made against him in the past. Evidence showed that she had threatened his property and even talked about breaking into his house. These threats painted a picture of a volatile relationship, culminating in the fatal crash.
It is day 2 in the trial of the Strongsville teen charged with murder in a deadly crash. McKenzie Sherill, at the time 17 years old, is accused of intentionally crashing a vehicle with her 20-year-old boyfriend, Dominic Russo, and his 19-year-old friend, Davian Flanagan, in the car. Now, the prosecution says she was going 100 miles per hour when she crashed into a building in northwest Strongsville in July of 2022. She said Sherill has always maintained that she could not remember how that crash happened and told her in a text that her vision faded to black in the minutes before. Sherill even telling her she wanted to get hypnotized so that she could remember exactly what happened. The prosecution presented that Sherill's behavior toward Russo had become hostile. And to show this, they played a recording of Sherill outside of his home just weeks before that crash.
I'm going to key your car if you do not let me in the house.
You're going to key my car?
If you don't let me in the house, yes.
She threatened his property? She threatened to break into his house?
Correct.
Did Dominic threaten the defendant?
No.
How would you describe Dominic's tone on these videos?
Very calm.
How would you describe the defendant's tone on these videos?
Irate and angry.
The prosecution presented compelling evidence that Sherill had planned the crash. They noted that a few days before the incident, she had driven the same route, presumably to plot the crime. The prosecutor emphasized the chilling nature of her actions. You see her driving very calmly and making the right turn, and then all evidence indicates she immediately put the pedal to the metal and drove straight into a building at 100 miles per hour. I think those really demonstrated to us that this was no accident.
The video of the crash. First, you can see the car making a normal right-hand turn here. Okay, everything's normal. Then inside the car, she decides she is going to end everyone's life. Let's watch.
No one wanted this to be a murder or to punish McKenzie Sherill for this accident. This was not a car accident. The evidence and signs proved that McKenzie Sherill murdered my son, Dominic, as well as Davian. There's no fix put in this case, as the Sherills would like to reply. I want to thank the Strongsville Police Department and the state of Ohio for seeking the truth behind this crash.
Families of Dom and Davia, I'm so deeply sorry. I hope one day you can see I would never let this happen or do it on purpose. I wish I could remember what happened. I'm just so sorry. I'm heartbroken. I love Dom and Davia. We were all friends and Dom was my soulmate. I wish I could take all your pain away. And I'm so sorry. And to my family, thank you for the support and all the love you guys give. Thank you for fighting with me. I love you all so much.
During the trial, the judge found Sherill guilty on 2 counts of murder. As the verdict was read, she stood up, tearfully listening to her fate. Before her sentencing, Sherill was given a moment to speak. She expressed her sorrow. Despite her tearful apology, the judge was unmoved, pointing out the deliberate nature of her actions and the lack of any plausible defense. There was no medical condition that caused this as an accident. There was no mechanical failure of the car. A failed suicide attempt is not a defense to murder.
Today is the sentencing of the defendant for the purposeful and intentional murders of Davion Flanagan and Dominic Rousseau. And in a way, it's the second time their families are gathered again to grieve. It's also a day when McKenzie's family will grieve for the future of their daughter. All 3 of these families and the friends of these families are suffering, and all of their lives have been irrevocably changed because of the actions of the defendant. The unintended and collateral consequences of a selfish, intentional, and cruel decision by McKenzie will ripple forever in time. It's literally changed history because it's ended 2 lives. 2 young men are dead. Their deaths were horrible, terrifying, and tragic. I will say again, if any reasonable person reviews Exhibit 802, there can be no doubt in your mind what happened this night. That even if McKenzie intended to also die in this crash, that is irrelevant. A failed suicide attempt is not a defense to murder. And even in a murder-suicide attempt, when the perpetrator executing the plan survives, the other death or deaths are still murder. There's a very good likelihood, McKenzie, that you will spend the rest of your life in prison. That won't be up to me. That will be up to the parole board, and that will be up to you to a great extent. I understand that the pain in this room wants me to impose the harshest sentence. But I don't believe that would be the appropriate sentence, because I do believe that McKenzie will not be out in 15 years. So she's sentenced on count 2, the murder of Davion Flanagan, 15 years to life. She's sentenced on count 1, the murder of Dominic Rousseau, 15 years to life, to be served concurrent to each other, with credit for time served.
Ultimately, McKenzie Sherill was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison for each count of murder, with the sentences to be served concurrently. The judge made it clear that her actions had irrevocably changed the lives of the victims' families and that she would face the severe consequences of her choices. That's all for this video. We hope you have enjoyed this video a lot. What are your thoughts on these courtroom moments? Let us know in the comment section. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon for more interesting videos like this. Thank you for watching our video.